stand together, we'll never fall.
Well, hi there and welcome back to another episode of the All Around Growth Podcast. My name is Rob Kaiser and I am your host. This is episode number 506 of a show where we talk about personal growth and development, something I like to refer to as all around growth. Personal growth and development that encompasses all 7 aspects of life. And that is financial, physical, personal development, family, spiritual, social, and career. And today is Sunday, July 9th, and we are live, or at least I am live in this moment, as this podcast will inevitably be released in the future, from the truck again on my way to church this Sunday morning. And since I very much enjoyed last week's episode reading from the 365 Tao, we are going to read from that again today, and I will utilize that for my talking points in addition to an update on what is going on in life with regard to those 7 aspects of life. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the book 365 Tao, it is a book authored by Deng Dao, a book of daily meditations, and it is a treasury of life-enhancing daily readings that turns a wise Taoist light on every facet of life. Each daily entry begins with a one-word title and its Chinese character in elegant calligraphy, followed by a brief poetic aphorism, which provides the theme, and followed by a clear, insightful meditation on the day's Taoist principle. And Deng Dao is the author of The Wandering Taoist, 7 Bamboo Tablets, Of the Cloudy Satchel, Gateway to a Vast World, and Scholar Warrior. At least he was the author of those books at the time of the publishing of this book, which was released in 1992, if I'm not mistaken. So with that being said, today is the 190th day of the year. The title of today's reading is Non-Yielding, and the brief poetic aphorism reads as follows: when in the arena, yield not to an aggressor. When outside the arena, affirm compassion. Now, the clear, insightful meditation on the day's Taoist principle of non-yielding reads like this: this world and the society are competitive. Tao uses the metaphor of the warrior to meet the competition. Warriors never yield to their opponents. They may sidestep, but they do not give way. Whether you are a lawyer, police officer, firefighter, doctor, business person, athlete, or any one of numerous other professions, you compete against either other people or natural forces. But there is a right way and a wrong way to compete. Avoid anger and greed. Use concentration and awareness. Coincidentally, concentration and awareness are also necessary for spirituality. That is why the follower of Tao incorporates the way of the warrior into training. The warrior and the sage both seek to transcend emotion and petty thinking, to perfect themselves, and to live lives of the deepest truth. But when outside the arena, do not forget to be kind. Leave behind competitive aggression. You must still have awareness, concentration, and reflex, but the expression will be different. Your compassion must not falter. That is why the combination of the way of the warrior with the way of Tao is the ultimate symbol of versatility. Such a follower of Tao commands the extremes of the universe. Now, that is quite the heady reading for today, and quite frankly, I'm not really sure where this is going to take me. There was a lot in the episode last week that seemed to tie together with everything that was going on. And like I said last week in episode number 505, it was very relevant to what was going on in life. And inevitably, I will find a way to determine how this is relevant to what's going on in life as well. Now, the world and this society are indeed competitive, and the metaphor of the warrior to meet that competition is interesting, because like we read, warriors never yield to their opponents, and they may sidestep, but they do not give way. And for those of you who are familiar with martial arts, I am not one of them. I believe that one of the ways in which many, if not most, martial arts function is that there is a component of redirecting your opponent's energy, sidestepping, if you will. And one thing I do like about this particular reading is that it indicates that whether you are a lawyer, a police officer, a firefighter, doctor, business person, athlete, or any one of numerous other professions, you compete against either other people or natural forces. So this isn't some kind of limiting thing to only certain types of people doing certain types of things. The way of the Tao, the way of the warrior, if you will, in this particular insightful meditation is applicable to all people doing all things. And ultimately, because this is applicable to all people doing all things, we come to understand that there is a right way and a wrong way to compete. And that right way and wrong way to compete is or involves anger and greed. The right way is to avoid anger and greed. The wrong way is to incorporate or embrace anger and greed. The right way is to use concentration and awareness. The wrong way is to lack concentration and to lack awareness. So why do we want to avoid anger? And why do we want to avoid greed? Well, as I think about this on the fly, anger and greed are two of what many of us refer to as the deadly sins. And if I'm going off memory here, the 7 deadly sins are pride, envy, lust, greed, anger, I don't know. And I would love to hear from you in the comments or in the Telegram chat at t.me what those 7 deadly sins are. And I think there's an 8th lumped in there somewhere. But I would love to hear some feedback from you in the Telegram group at t.me/allaroundgrowth or on any one of the social media platforms which I do not engage in very well, and hear your feedback not only on what those deadly sins are, but why we should avoid them, especially anger and greed. In short, when we are angry, we aren't wholly aware of that which we are experiencing in the current moment. We are not present. We are focused on something that happened in the past. When we're focused on something that happened in the past, we obviously cannot be in the present. When we focus on greed, we think about that which we either do not have or that which we want more of, and therefore are living in the future thinking about ways to obtain that. When we are in the future, we are not present. So by being angry and being greedy, we simply cannot be right here and right now. When we concentrate and are aware of what we're doing in this life, we can be present, that is. Concentration and awareness of our life in all of those 7 different areas that I previously mentioned, our financial life, our physical life, our life with regard to personal development, our family life, our spiritual life, our social life, and our career. When we concentrate and are aware of what's going on, how we are approaching those 7 different areas, why we're doing the things that we're doing, and ultimately what we're doing, then we have no other option than to be in the present, than to be right here, right now. And an easy way to get there, let me rephrase that. A simple way to get there is through meditation. And meditation is something that is a struggle for me because I'm not overly familiar with it, but some people in my life, some mentors, friends, people that I look to for guidance, have suggested that I try to engage in this practice of meditation. And the way that they suggest doing so, it varies. And this isn't just a single person, but this is multiple people. Some people like to use guided meditation. Some people like to put on some kind of meditative music in the background, and some people like to sit in silence. And excuse me, the silence is the approach that I like to take. And the first time that I really tried to engage in this way, I had done some work, some work that would fall under the spheres of personal development, if you will. And I shared that with another person. And in doing so, I had some instructions to follow afterwards, after we did this exercise together. And one of the suggested instructions was to take an hour, set a timer for an hour, and simply sit. And I'm going to tell you that was probably the longest hour of my life, and also the shortest hour of my life. And what I mean by that is initially to sit silent with your thoughts. It's difficult at first. I must have looked at the clock, I don't know how many times when I began. I set the timer for 60 minutes. I look at the clock, 57 minutes. Look at the clock again, 51 minutes. I look at the clock again, 42 minutes. And then I stopped looking at the clock. And I found myself thinking. Now, exactly what I was thinking about, I do not remember, but my mind was racing, and it raced until it didn't. And then the last time I looked at the clock, there were 2 minutes left. And that allowed me to learn, in a sense, to be present. And going back to the reading, we read that coincidentally, concentration and awareness are also necessary for spirituality. And over the past few months, over the past year and a half, I don't know, I've come to realize that all of this spiritual seeking that I've been doing, not only for the past year and a half, but essentially for my entire life as an adult, or what many of us might consider adult. And I'm not talking about, the legal age of consent. We're 18 years old. We can do things like join the military and vote. Do adult things. I'm talking about coming of age and learning how to think like an adult, not necessarily acting like an adult, but kind of around, say, puberty age, we begin to come of age, process information a little differently, think a little bit differently. And it was at that time that I began thinking a little differently about spirituality. And what I mean by that is, I was raised in a church. It doesn't particularly matter what church. Some of you who have listened to this podcast for a considerable amount of time might already know that. But for those of you who may be new to the show, the particular flavor of church that I was raised in is irrelevant. But nevertheless, I was raised in the church, and I had questions about certain things within church that I was raised in. I had certain questions about, quote, the faith. And a lot of those questions weren't answered, or they weren't answered in a manner that was satisfactory to me. And I found myself feeling disenchanted and disappointed, disenfranchised. I just found myself being dissed, right? Feeling dissed. And that ultimately led to my a growing away, or pushing away rather, of spirituality. But I heard someone say recently, you can't push a rope, right? What is on the other side, or the other end of that rope, is spirituality. It's always there. You can't, I don't think I can push it away, but I can always pull it. I can always draw it near, or draw myself closer to it. And one of the ways in which I can do this, that I'm learning to do this, is, like we read today, is using concentration and awareness. And like I just said, concentration and awareness are also necessary for spirituality. And in doing this and pushing away spirituality, and because I felt repulsed by it, like I said, disenfranchised, disenchanted, and just upset with the fact that people couldn't answer my questions. Well, I soon came to learn that I was asking the wrong questions. And throughout the last 30 years or so, I've been seeking out different ways to understand this, quote, spirituality. And many of the ways, most of the ways that I engaged in this act of seeking were misguided. While I may have thought that I was on the right path, or that I was on the right track to understanding this thing, which, quite frankly, I don't think will ever be able to be understood by us as humans. It's simply something that can't be understood, and the depth of that actual thought is exactly what made me lose my train of thought. Nevertheless, concentration and awareness are necessary for spirituality. And I guess where I was going with that thought is I came to learn recently that my constant search for spirituality was due to the fact that the way that I lived for so long was a direct result of the fact that I was spiritually broken. I had a spiritual malady, if you will. And the spiritual malady was a direct result of me pushing that away. It never left me, despite how alone I felt at certain times in life. But I closed myself off to the sunlight of the Spirit. And in doing so, I became cold, calloused, arrogant, indifferent, apathetic. And all of that contributed to me learning finally that I was indeed a broken person. And the only way that I could become unbroken, or the only way that I could engage in some kind of repair of myself, was to become spiritually fit, much in the way that we become physically fit. We have to be consistent with our practice. Much in the way that we become financially fit, we must be consistent with our practice. Much in the way that we develop personally, we must be consistent with our practice. Much in the way that we seek to strengthen our families, we must be consistent. Much in the way that we cultivate and grow our social circles, we must be consistent. Much in the way that we seek to grow our careers and advance ourselves within them, we must be consistent. And with our spiritual growth and development, that is no different. We must be consistent. And as we continue reading, that is why the follower of Tao incorporates the way of the warrior into training. Well, what does that mean? The warrior and the sage both seek to transcend emotion and petty thinking, to perfect themselves and to live lives of the deepest truth. Well, what does that mean? Okay, it's very clear that we want to transcend emotion and petty thinking, to perfect ourselves, and to live lives of the deepest truth. Well, that begs the question, what is truth? Well, to me, there is only one truth. That truth is God. And personally, I've found a way to seek that truth, and my understanding of God may be different than your understanding of God, and that's okay. But personally, I understand God as a triune God. God, the infinite creator, who became man in flesh, the God-man, embedded with the Holy Spirit to walk among us for the salvation of all mankind. And much like the rope analogy, we can close ourselves off to that, but God never leaves us. We can't push God away. God is at the end of the rope. We can't push it away, but we can pull God closer. But what we have to do is take action. We have to do the work. And some of that work involves transcending emotion and petty thinking to perfect ourselves and to live lives of the deepest truth. The deepest truth being God. So in order to connect with God, in order to become God, if you will, to unite with God, to allow God to enter into us, we have to transcend emotion and petty thinking and perfect ourselves. And we can do this by finding balance in all of these 7 ways, these 7 aspects of life that I previously mentioned: financial, physical, personal development, family, spiritual, social, and career. I think the key component of all of this is our spiritual life. Right? And in this context, we're talking about the warrior. And, you know, when we tell stories and allegories, you know, we have to provide some sort of context for understanding. And as we read in that aphorism, when in the arena, yield not to an aggressor. When outside the arena, affirm compassion. In the meditation, we continue to read, but when outside the arena, do not forget to be kind. Leave behind competitive aggression. You must still have awareness, concentration, and reflex, but the expression will be different. So what is the arena? We can look at the arena in an isolated circumstance as, you know, our work environment, or the arena when we're at home with challenging family relationships, or the arena within our finance, our financial life, or the arena of the gym, if we're using that as a mechanism to increase our physical health and well-being, or the arena of, you know, our social lives, our social circles. But the arena, as I understand it right here, right now, the arena is ourselves. The arena is inside us. And when we are outside of the arena, when we are outside of ourselves. And that's kind of the point, is to live outside of ourselves. We must not forget to be kind. We must leave behind competitive aggression. When we are outside of ourselves, we can still compete with ourselves, but we must not have aggression either towards ourselves or towards other people. It does no good. It is a disservice not only to ourselves, or moreover, because it is a disservice to ourselves, it is ultimately a disservice to everyone else who is around us if we are working to go outside of ourselves, yet still having this kind of competitive aggression. Everyone around us, or everyone that we surround ourselves with in that moment, it's not necessarily fruitless, but we're not living up to our full potential. They cannot engage with us at the level that they potentially can if we forget to be kind, right? We continue to read that our compassion must not falter. Compassion for everyone. You know, a verse from Scripture was shared with me earlier this week about loving your enemies, being kind and generous to them, lending to them without any expectation of return. And this is difficult for many of us to understand because they're our enemies, right? We don't want to be compassionate towards our enemies. They're our enemies, right? We want to resist them. We want to fight them. They challenge us, so we retaliate. No. We must be kind. We must not engage this competitive aggression. We must embrace them. We must love them. We must give to them freely of ourselves. We must give in order to receive. Our compassion must not falter. And we continue to read, that is why the combination of the way of the warrior with the way of the Tao is the ultimate symbol of versatility. We must have that warrior spirit while embracing the understanding of the Tao, the way, the path, God. Remember though, God is Tao, but Tao is not God. To live this life of balance, to live this harmonious life, we must embrace versatility. We must find balance in all of our life, all 7 aspects. And then ultimately, we conclude this insightful meditation with a final sentence that reads, "Such a follower of Tao commands the extremes of the universe." Such a follower of Tao commands the extremes of the universe. There is only one that truly commands the extremes of the universe. The one that commands the extremes of the universe is the infinite creator, the the Alpha and the Omega. God. But if we are willing to do what it takes to unite ourselves with the Alpha and the Omega, the infinite creator, the universal spirit, then we too come closer to commanding the extremes of the universe. And the only way in which we can actually do that is by commanding nothing, by giving it all up to the one who commands the extremes of the universe. And once we do, then all of a sudden everything becomes easy. It's not simple, but it's easy. So guys, I hope that you enjoyed this podcast today. I hope that you enjoy these readings and my thoughts on the 365 Tao. I enjoy sharing them with you, and I hope that you find value in the show when it is performed this way. Like some of you know, some of you that I speak with outside of the groups, and for those of you who have listened to the show in the past, I am hopeful that when time allows, when I make that time rather, that some changes will be coming to the show. I'd like to do something a little different, maybe involving a Patreon platform to help support the show and provide others an opportunity to do that. So stay tuned for that. I'm hoping to get caught up on business, and when things slow down a little bit, I'm hoping that I can make some progress in this particular passion project of mine, and I hope that you will join me when that happens. But otherwise, we'll talk more on that later, and I look forward to catching you in the next episode, wherever that takes us. This is Rob Kaiser, and thank you.
In a world of pain, what can I do? The needs are many and answers are few. People turn away, and I wonder why. If I can help somebody, then I want to try. People may think that it's odd that I believe in friendship and love, and truth is always the best way to the world that may seem odd. I'm an odd fellow. I'm an odd fellow. I'm an odd fellow. If we stand together, we'll never fall. We can make a difference and answer the call. You know the times are wasting every day, and we can help some.